All right, guys, that is week 15, first round of the fantasy playoffs in the books. I hope you guys survived without too many cuts, bruises, nicks, and scars. I managed to make it out slightly unscathed from both my matchups, so I'm still rolling, and I hope you guys are rolling with me. If you didn't, I'm so sorry, but at least you made the playoffs, something to build on for next year. But as always, got to recap what I don't think is hyperbole when I say this is one of the wilder weeks in the NFL. Some duds to break down, injuries, some guys that returned from injuries to break down as well. And, we're going to go through all that, including waivers today here on this channel. Also, again, keep in mind that I'm also over on Sleeper doing player breakdowns. We're going to be doing a massive slate of players, over 50 players for this upcoming week for this very crucial semifinal playoff matchup in week 16. So as always, like the video, subscribe, find me here and on Sleeper HQ, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back into TwinTakes Fantasy Football. Yeah, no, it's not hyperbole when I say it's the wildest week in the NFL, because there are some endings to games and some things that happened over this weekend that, it's like, okay, that might happen once per season. Maybe just some absolute bizarre weirdo stuff happens once. No, this happened all in the span of one weekend, multiple overtime games, just insane performances, crazy comebacks, a ton of stuff to break down. So let's stop delaying it. We're going to get into some headlines here. How can we not start with the largest comeback in NFL history, as the Vikings were down 33-0 against the Colts, the Jeff Saturday-led Colts, Mr. Leader of Men. I don't know what's going on with this Vikings team. Again, people are calling them the most fraudulent 10-3 team. I don't know if I would disagree with them after that performance, but again, they showed strength through adversity. They came back, leading the largest single-handed comeback in the history of the NFL, 33 points. I know someone also mentioned that it was hilarious that not only did the Colts sack Frank Reich, but they also sacked his record, because back when he was the quarterback for the Oilers, he led the previous largest comeback in history up until that point. So they got rid of his job and his record. Poor Frank Reich, and the Colts doing the absolute most to him. But I mean, it's good. It shows that the Vikings don't give up. They have talent around them. They have coaching. They're not a team that quits. Should be good for them going down the playoffs when they're probably going to experience adversity yet again. But it is very concerning they got into a 33-0 hole against this Colts team that is led by Jeff Saturday, a guy who has no head coaching experience previously. Oh, and also Jonathan Taylor being injured with a high ankle sprain, being out for the rest of the game on the first play of the drive. So these are guys like Zach Moss, Deion Jackson, Alec Pierce doing this to you. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it really was the Colts. There's a lot of self-inflicted wounds that they're going to want to clean up here sooner rather than later. But again, another amazing performance by Kirk Cousins, over 400 yards. Another insane game, almost 30 points for Justin Jefferson. Dalvin Cook had that monster 67-yard touchdown reception. And then we're going to talk about KJ Osborne later here today. But just incredible performances. I don't know how well that translates over to a matchup where they're not facing one of the worst defenses in the league and when they're not trying to climb out of a 33-point hole. So it's weird, the kind of streak the Vikings have been on over the past couple games, just absolutely horrific defense, but then just this insane passing offense. I don't know how sustainable that will be, but we'll talk about that in the studs section mostly, because that's how you get a lot of fantasy points. You play catch-up ball and you try to score as quickly and as often as possible. So next game will be the shootout in the snowstorm up in Buffalo, Miami versus the Buffalo Bills, and a pretty incredible game, I must say. I know there's a lot of concerns that the weather, especially for me, I know I was a propagator of that with the 17-mile-an-hour winds and 3 to 4 inches of snow. I know I was predicting there's going to be a slugfest running on the ground, and there wasn't going to be much points, and it's going to be fantasy disappointment all around. And you know what? I wasn't wrong. Because Raheem Mostert was indeed a great start. James Cook, indeed a good flex start. He had 10 points as well. So the running backs were utilized pretty heavily in this game. I mean, the matchups were there against these defenses that are a little soft against the run, plus given the weather conditions. So we knew that was going to happen. But these are two quarterbacks that really laced up their bootstraps and actually got themselves ready for this game. Josh Allen had an incredible performance. We'll talk about him in the stud section later. Tua, not as good of a performance, but he certainly slung the ball all over the field. Amazing long target to Jalen Waddle, which he then took and turned into a house call for, I think, 37 yards through the air, then another 33 on the ground. Tyreek Hill also coming out and putting on a show in the snow. I know he said and tweeted out that he had a bad game. Oh, shut up, Tyreek. Shut up, Tyreek. You had a great game. You're a really good wide receiver. And then obviously, not really Stephon Diggs, but Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis, all catching some passes deep down the field. So it's good to know that these quarterbacks can really sling it in the snow, that the adverse conditions aren't going to completely impact fantasy for you guys, especially when you're dealing with those assets and with those guys who don't like to play in a dome, such as a team like the Buffalo Bills, who should be fantasy relevant for this year and many, many years to come, as long as they have that great young core up there on the offense. Number 3 headline, we're going to talk about the Bears failing upwards, and they played the Philadelphia Eagles pretty close. The final score was 25-20, but this was a good loss for the Bears. I mean, they don't have Darnell Mooney. Khalil Herbert's on season-ending IR. They traded away both Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn. They lost Tariq Armstead again from the offensive line. They're really banged up, and they don't have a lot of players in the offense, but it's great because you know what? They're in the position right now to take either Jalen Carter or Will Anderson at the top of the draft, which is going to be a great boon for their defense, have them on the rookie contract. Justin Fields is that dude. He looks like an absolute stud. You don't have to worry about quarterback going forward. He's going to be your franchise quarterback. He's absolutely insane. Even the Eagles players are commenting on like how crazy fast he was on the ground, how unable they were to deal with him, and they played tough to the most dominant team in the NFL right now, which is Philadelphia Eagles. So they still get that loss, still continue that great draft position, so they can get one of those blue chip players like a Jalen Carter or Will Anderson to completely change the face of their defense, which I'm sure Matt Eberflus loves as a defensive coordinator in his past life. And they also continue to fail upwards because they do have their quarterback in place for the future, and they do have a lot of good pieces. That's just showing offensive production around the quarterback. Number 4, the Bengals balanced win. Got to highlight the Bengals coming back and climbing out of that 17-0 hole against Tampa Bay, putting up a very emphatic win, 34-17 at the end. And they did it by involving everyone. They had Tyler Boyd find the end zone for the first time in forever. T. Higgins got involved. Jamar Chase found the end zone. Joe Mixon was pretty involved on the ground and in the pass game. And none of these guys really, none of them broached the 20-point mark. None of them really got this insane fantasy blowout performance, but they were all good. They're all heavily utilized. They're all involved. They're all part of this game script. And I think a balanced offense is what the Bengals and most NFL teams really need. It's what's going to open up the offense. I mean, and you're saying, oh no, you want to put up points. You want to throw it all the time. You want to have like a Geno Smith where all he throws is to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I get that. But if all you do is throw all the time, the DBs, they're just going to load up DBs. They're going to put in smaller nickel corners instead of a linebacker. They're going to ease off the front there. They're going to rush 4 and drop everyone else into coverage. And it's just going to be made, it's going to make the entire quarterback's life an absolute nightmare, and none of the DBs will ever get open. So, a balanced offense keeps the defense on their toes, opens up the secondary for the DBs. And I think it's going to be really beneficial for the Bengals as they continue to this quick scheme offense. Ever since they had that really 0-2 stretch at the beginning of the season, Zach Taylor has gone into the lab, altered what he does with his play calling, and they come out and they have one of the shortest snap to releases in the game, and it works for them. And they have the offensive players, Joe Mixon catching passes out of the backfield, Jamar Chase down the field, T. Higgins down the field to make it work. And it's going to be a very, very scary offense going forward. Number 5, let's talk about some wild endings. Again, not hyperbole when we talk about this being one of the more insane weeks in the NFL that we've seen. So first, the Raiders. What is Ramondre Stevenson doing? I mean, he had a great game, but he turns around, laterals to Jacoby Myers. Jacoby freaks out, tries to pitch it back to Mac Jones. Mac Jones is yelling at the guy. He's like, go down, just go down, just go down. It's tied. We're gonna go overtime. It's fine. Jacoby just tries to play hero ball, throws it back. Chandler Jones intercepts it, runs it back, absolutely truck sticks Mac Jones on his way to the end zone, and it's game over for the Raiders. I would not be surprised if some heads are rolling on the floor of Bill Belichick's office after that. I mean, Matt Patricia should be fired regardless, but then the special teams after that play call, or whoever's idea was to start lateraling, I'm sure they're going to be walking out of that building or walking in on Monday morning, and their key card won't work when they try to open up the offices at Gillette Stadium, which is just wild. Like, I don't know what got in their heads that, like, hey, listen, we got to just do some hacky sack wild stuff to come us back in the game. But, sometimes you're in the heat of the moment. I've been in the heat of the moment. I've done decisions because you're not just thinking, you're just trying to react, and that's what happens. Secondly, the Jacksonville Jaguars pulling that insane upset over the Dallas Cowboys. And obviously, it looked like the Cowboys in overtime were going to go down and kick a field goal and win after stopping the Jaguars in the initial drive. However, I believe it was Noah Brown was the intended receiver, where Dak puts it not perfectly. It was a little low and off the body, but it bounces off of Noah Brown's chest plate, bounces into the hand of the DB, and he runs it back in for the game-winning interception touchdown. Did not see that one coming. Was talking to one of my friends who's a Cowboys fan, and I was saying, oh, look, you're driving right now. You're going to be totally fine. Tony Pollard had just broken off that 21-yard run. You're going to win, and you'll be happy. And they just text me, LMAO, like, I'm done. So, yeah, I mean, that's just the Cowboys for you, but that was just a really wild ending. And again, unlucky, frankly. Not so much bad decision making as it was with the Patriots and the Raiders, but that was just unlucky, not being able to hold the ball, and just finds itself in a DB who runs it in for an interception touchdown. All right, we're back. A little bit of technical difficulties there, but not a problem. I can put two video files together. So, got to talk about our last headline here, Giants Commanders. What a wild game coming out of Sunday Night Football. And of course, it's going to revolve around what happened at the end, the absolute lashing the NFL referees have been sustaining both on Sunday night on Twitter and through every media pundit throughout Friday and this morning. I mean, first comes out where Terry McLaurin's on the side. He lines up, asks the ref, hey, am I good? And he goes, no. He points up a little bit further. He scooches up. Apparently, he ushers over to the ref again. Ref gives a thumbs up and then immediately puts his hand on the hip and calls the flag. From watching the video, I think that I don't know if I saw a thumbs up. I saw him maybe put like a little bit more, and then maybe he thought Terry just like ignored him. But I did see him go immediately, and he was ready to throw that flag even before the ball was snapped. So not really sure why the ref wasn't just going to let him. You know, Terry McLaurin was clearly like thinking about, hey, I want to be on the line. I'm not trying to alter the play or alter the formation in any way, shape, or fashion. So it was really weird from that play calling style, where you can tell him, hey, scoot up a little bit further, and then just kind of usher it to him, and maybe even if it wasn't directly confirming it, just vague enough to where it's like, okay, now I'm just going to call a flag on you after you clearly showed interest in trying to get up to the line. And then secondly, when the DB absolutely smothered Curtis Samuel. I know it's like the last play of the game. Refs don't want to get involved, but come on, that one was blatant and obvious. He just had him in a bear hug and completely, like, when you can't lift your arms up like this, that's pass interference. Absolutely horrific way, which is going to have insane implications on the playoffs going forward. Giants hold tiebreaker over the Commanders, and the Commanders obviously lose a game here. So, I mean, this could seriously be the thing that decides if the Commanders don't make the playoffs this year. Not that they're going to probably win it anyways, but, you know, they would probably like to make it. So that's certainly an issue. But without terrible refereeing, I digress. Let's get into some more fantasy relevant content. But we did have to talk about some headlines there. But let's talk about our stud performances of the week. First off, we got to talk about Zay Jones, wide receiver extraordinaire for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think I mentioned that this was going to be a sneaky good game, and that Trevor Lawrence is Patrick Mahomes-esque. Obviously, Zay Jones, not really a well-known household name prior to this season with the Jags. However, Trevor Lawrence does have that quality about him where when he gets on the field, he is good enough to elevate the play of people around him. That's why Christian Kirk has looked so good, why Zay Jones has looked so good, why Travis Etienne has looked really, really good after his torn Achilles. And obviously, when you're playing the Dallas Cowboys and you're playing those high-end, those high-profile games, pretty sure it was going to hit the over, a very high-scoring game, and Zay Jones was the beneficiary, scoring 3 touchdowns. Christian Kirk was not as involved, but Zay Jones was really able to separate himself, and they have him under contract for 2 more years, very cheap option with Jacksonville Jaguars, and a great day for Zay Jones. He's actually put together quite a few stretch runs of good performances, so maybe a guy to be a high-end flex option for the rest of the playoffs. Number 2, Russell Gage with 21.9 points. And we've been looking for anything, just something at all for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense to actually come together. And towards the end of the game, when it was a little bit too little too late, it seemed like Tom Brady found his new guy, and it's Russell Gage. We've seen struggles with Mike Evans in the past. Chris Godwin did have a good game. He had about 18 fantasy points, found the end zone. But after their initial 17-point spring of points, it just kind of seemed to find a lull and just couldn't get going. And towards the end of the game, it seemed like Russell Gage was the guy that was the one that was, dynamic, engaging with Brady, going out, running crisp routes, still playing hard towards the end of the game. Obviously, he's younger than both Godwin and Evans, so that might contribute to it, but, could be a new favorite target for Brady after that really, really emphatic last drive where Russell Gage had like 4 catches and then also finding the touchdown there. Number 3, can't get it through a studs list without Jerick McKinnon. Absolutely smashed it. Back-to-back 30-point weeks. This dude is on an absolute tear. Over these past 2 weeks, he's racked up nearly 200 receiving yards and 75 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire completely out of the picture, we know how much Patrick Mahomes loves his pass-catching backs, and Jerick McKinnon now has that job solely to himself. Isaiah Pacheco is not really a pass catcher, so he's really the more dirty work, get on the ground, put those hard-nosed yards on first and second downs. And Jerick McKinnon, he really is finding a great niche in this offense, and especially, they had an insane matchup against Houston, so I get it why Jerick McKinnon was that good, but if this is the way that Andy Reid's going to run the offense through Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon, and eventually a couple passes to Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster when it's necessary, I would hope that they would not keep games as close as they did to Houston this past week, but it's certainly working for Jerick McKinnon. And Jet McKinnon, who has bounced around between Minnesota, had a ton of injury struggles in San Francisco with the 49ers, now is finding a second life, kind of Cordell Patterson-esque here in Kansas City. And I think he's going to be heavily involved going forward. If you have him on your team, bravo to you. We're going to wrap up the studs list with 2 quarterbacks. One, Josh Allen, 35.8 points. Absolutely insane performance from him. He's obviously lives in the snow. He lives up in Buffalo, so I'm sure he's used to the cold. But just the fact that he's just running all over the yard, had an insane 44-yard run, still throwing absolute dimes in the snow. The weather does not seem to affect him. This dude is just otherworldly special, especially for fantasy football, the way he uses his legs and how fearless he is. And 5th, and with a bittersweet note, we do have Jalen Hurts. Again, he had 3 rushing touchdowns, just so good for fantasy. He's been dominant all year, leading one of the most dynamic offenses for the Eagles, the best team in the NFL currently, according to many people, including myself. He finishes with 34.7 points, however, does not come out completely unscathed. There's varying reports, sprained shoulder, separated shoulder. Some people are reporting a broken clavicle. Whatever it is, he's very, very doubtful to play this next coming week against the Cowboys, which if you have been riding Jalen Hurts, he has absolutely been someone who, if you have on a team, you most likely made the playoffs. So if you're here, you are now scrambling for a streaming quarterback. He's absolutely really submarining a ton of guys who are now... He took average teams, and this is what I see personally in a lot of leagues that I'm in, is where he took average teams and made them great, where there wasn't like top to bottom high end talent, but week in and week out, Jalen Hurts is getting you 30 points and just being a difference maker at that quarterback position. And now these teams that really didn't have, they lose their difference maker. They lose their one guy that was Jalen Hurts, and now they're scrambling for replacements. And I do have a very, very cheeky quarterback replacement for you, especially in deeper leagues. So just have to trust me with me, and we'll get through it on the waiver wire. But if this is a swan song for Jalen Hurts, rest easy, my dear Prince. You were amazing for fantasy this year. Let's get into some honorable mentions. Obviously, we have Dalvin Cook from the insane Vikings comeback, or the historic Vikings comeback against the Colts with 25 points. Obviously, a lot of that came from his 67-yard touchdown reception. The little screen pass they turned into 67-yard touchdown reception, absolutely insane. Christian McCaffrey, 22.8 points. We knew he was going to have this insane Sistine Chapel-esque ceiling going up against the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night, obviously with Brock Purdy under center. I think Daniel Jeremiah said it best. You have truck quarterbacks and you have trailer quarterbacks. You have a truck quarterback like Josh Allen who carries the entire load behind him. Then you have a trailer quarterback who has everything in front of him and he's just being dragged along behind it like a chariot. Brock Purdy is absolutely the benefactor of the San Francisco 49ers offense, and CMC is one of the main guys pulling him on that trailer. Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, obviously part of that fiesta, the historic comeback fiesta as well. We're looking at 24.3 points for Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's just that dude. He's the wide receiver number 1 on the year. Kirk Cousins, 32.4 points. When you get in those situations, you just throw the ball, and Kirk Cousins is not a bad thrower of the football. So when he has that opportunity to do that, He can absolutely go out and have himself a game. Also, we're going to mention here is KJ Osborne, 26.7 points as well. Found the end zone a couple times towards the end of the game to help facilitate that comeback. Again, a byproduct of that just ferocious adding of points towards the end of the game. George Kittle, 23.3 points. There was not much passing to be spoken of in this 49ers offense. However, when it did, it went to George Kittle. He finds the end zone twice. However, one was a completely busted coverage by the Seattle Seahawks. Their defense really isn't that good. So while their offense is competent, their defense is basically like a sieve. So we could expect certain passes to get through, and obviously George Kittle capitalizes on that. Justin Fields, 23.6 points. Nothing special, nothing great game-breaking, but I want to highlight him because he managed to put that up and rush for nearly 100 yards against the Philadelphia Eagles defense, threw for 152 more and 2 touchdowns. The kid is special. One of the best quarterbacks, young quarterbacks in the league right now. Him and Trevor Lawrence have a ton of bright future ahead of them. And I was very impressed. I know a lot of people are saying, do I start him versus the number 1 ranked Philly defense? You absolutely do, and he absolutely paid off for you. Jalen Waddle obviously finds his way after 4 very, very bad weeks, finds his way back to the studs list with 18.9 points. Again, a lot of it was on that 60-yard touchdown that he had where he caught it about 30 yards down and ran for another 30 yards. Again, due to just an athletic freak. Travis Kelce, there we go, back into the studs list again for him, 15.5 points. Nothing crazy, but you saw a ton of utilization. He had, I believe, 8 or 9 receptions. Again, this is what you want to see from Travis Kelce. He's just a volume and target monster. And in conjunction with that, Patrick Mahomes continues to get it done. A lot of that was to Jerick McKinnon. A lot of dump offs to Jerick McKinnon, and he went to town and did work, but also finding Juju, finding MVS down the field as a deep threat, finding Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes exits the game against Houston, who typically is not known for giving up good quarterback games. He exits with 32.7 points. Very good for Patty Mahomes there. Derrick Henry, he's a beast. What can I tell you? 24.3 points. Latavius Murray had a great game coming in, and 20.7 points against Arizona in the battle of the backups. Finds the end zone for the only offensive score there. So Latavius Murray, in a world of garbage, he is the one bright spot for the Broncos. Ramondre Stevenson, a lot of concerns around the status of his ankle after he exited the game against the Raiders pretty early 2 weeks ago, but dude looked great. Apart from that one really ill-advised lateral, he puts up 23.8 points, finds the end zone. Dude is just an absolute monster. 172 yards on the ground. Yeah, I think that ankle's fine. Tyler Algier, I mean, we know this is a Falcons team, especially with Desmond Ridder in our quarterback. They were going to run the ball really heavily. Tyler Algier got the bulk of the work here. 22.1 points, finds the end zones twice. Absolutely amazing. Saquon Barkley breaks out of his rut as well with 20.5 points. The only offensive touchdown on, I believe, either side of the game on Saturday night. But, was absolutely... looked fresh, looked explosive, was coming off of tackles, breaking tackles, running for these 10, 12, 14 yards runs. The dude is special. They're going to have to re-sign him because there's not many talents like him in the running back room. Chris Godwin, we talked about, 18.3 points. It was an okay performance. Not much to talk about. A.J. Brown, 22.6 points. Both him and Devonta Smith had amazing games, but A.J. Brown does get into that, elevates in the 22.6 status, finding the end zone. Unfortunately, his stock is going to go severely down as long as Jalen Hurts is not in the playoffs with him. David Montgomery, again, benefiting by the fact that Darnell Mooney nor Khalil Herbert is in the game. So got a passing touchdown from Justin Fields as well. Finds his way with 22.6 points. Absolutely dominant performance for David Montgomery. Still continues to be a week in and week out must start from the fantasy position. Rashid Shaheed, apparently the new offensive weapon for the New Orleans Saints. Even in a great matchup, I mean, Alvin Kamara, he just looks done. He looks burnt. He looks tired, frankly. And Raheem Shaheed and Juwan Johnson were the guys that kind of got it done for this offense. So, yeah, Juwan Johnson, 20.2 points, finds the end zone twice. Raheem Shaheed, just incredible, 17 points, just a ton of targets, ton of receptions, and gets it done. Noah Brown, apart from that nasty botch at the end of the game, found the end zone twice, 19.9 points. Don't know if that's going to be consistent week to week. Jahan Dotson, very, very excited with what he's going to be doing towards the end of the season. Curtis Samuel seems to be being utilized a little bit less and less in the offense. Antonio Gibson, obviously with his injury concerns, a little bit less and less in the offense as well. But Jahan Dotson, as he comes back from injury, he's found the end zone twice in for a second week in a row has been really, really solid for fantasy and in real life, and I think they really, really like him and going to get him involved down the stretch. CJ Uzama for the Jets, only offensive touchdown scorer there, finds the end zone twice for 17.1 points. Dawson Knox was the best offensive scorer for the Buffalo Bills up in that snowball, and we can't say we're surprised. The Miami Dolphins are the 27th worst team against the tight end position, so we really anticipated a game script of run, short pass to Dawson Knox, and he had some short passes, he had some long passes, and he found the end zone. And finally, from this Monday night game, who else? A.J. Dillon, 20.6 points. Aaron Jones, 18.6 points. Dillon in the end zone twice. Aaron Jones just getting absolute work done on the ground and as a pass catcher. They're just so good, and it's really nice to see that the Packers are utilizing this insane dynamic run duo that they have for once. That's going to wrap up the studs. Let's talk a couple duds here. Jonathan Taylor, 1.8 points, exits the game right after the first play. He breaks off a big run, goes down, re-aggravates that same ankle injury, and unfortunately his fantasy season is done. Granted, if you had him on your team, you probably didn't make the fantasy playoffs with how much of a bust he's been, but it is disappointing. This is how his season ends. Miles Sanders, 1.4 points. Not something you were expecting against Chicago, who's one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, but all the rushing touchdowns went to Jalen Hurts, and then they also decided to just have this insane passing attack. Again, I think his utilization will be increased with Jalen Hurts out due to injury and trying to be a crutch for Gardner Minshew. However, I don't think his efficiency will go up. His utilization will increase, efficiency will decrease. So, I mean, he can be what he has been in past years, which is 10 to 12 points in a week in and week out. Devontae Adams, 4.8 points. I mean, Darren Waller comes back, and now you see that now you have another trusted wide receiver or another pass catcher, for that matter, in the Raiders offense. So, without Hunter Renfrow, without Darren Waller, it was all Devontae Adams. Now they can show that they can win without hyper-targeting Devontae Adams, and just they got it done without him. Number 4, Marquise Brown, 3.9 fantasy points. You can't. If Trace McSorley's the quarterback, you can't do anything. Colt McCoy, I don't know if he'll be back next week. From a pass catcher standpoint, even with Colt McCoy, Marquise Brown does not have the same connection yet with Kyler. This offense for the Cardinals has lost all sense of explosivity, all sense of upside. Just can't touch these. I don't want to touch Marquise Brown, maybe DeAndre Hopkins with how talented he is, but it's just so unfortunate. This is what we're left with in the most crucial time of the fantasy season with the Cardinals and an offense we thought was going to be absolutely dynamic. Finally, Brandon Ayuk, a guy that I was really high on coming into this week. I thought what happened to George Kittle was going to happen to Brandon Ayuk, and what happened to Brandon Ayuk was going to happen to George Kittle. I knew it wasn't going to be enough fantasy passing offense to sustain 2 pass catching options in this 49ers offense, but one was there. It was Kittle. It makes sense. He's a bigger body target. Rookie quarterbacks tend to rely on those safety nets and those underneath throws a little bit more. Made sense for the game script against Seattle Seahawks, so that's just the way the cards fell. Some honorable mentions, some more tight ends that just absolutely disappointed. Mark Andrews, David Njoku, Dalton Schultz. Mark Andrews, I mean, this Ravens offense right now is just absolutely sputtering. There's nothing you can really do. J.K. Dobbins was actually pretty good. Very happy with what he was able to output on the field, getting into the double digits, but nothing you're going to write home about. And then Mark Andrews, I mean, Tyler Huntley could not get anything done. They only mustered 3 offensive points. It was an atrocious day. David Njoku, obviously, just couldn't get it done. It was a game in which both teams have been repeatedly hitting the unders in the Browns and the Ravens. And this is a game that just absolutely smashed that under with 16 total points. Just not a whole lot of offense going on. No need for him to be utilized. Relied heavily on the run game in Chubb and Hunt. So Njoku doesn't really get his fair share. And Dalton Schultz, I mean, 2.5 points, man, just wasn't heavily utilized. You had Noah Brown going off. You had CeeDee Lamb having a great game. Just not really much utilization for him. And also you have Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott, just too many mouths to feed. Chris Olave, 6.8 points. That's unfortunate. He's been a guy that was really, really good throughout the middle half of the season, but it really has tailed off as kind of reality is set in for the Saints that they're not going to make the playoffs and they're not this high-end team that they thought they were. He just hasn't been getting open. I don't know really why that is. He's just had a couple bad games in a row, so it's hard to trust Chris Olave right now. Rashad White, we knew it was going to be a tough game for him against a pretty stout Bengals run defense, 4.8 points. You'd hope to get a little bit more involved in the passing game, a little bit more force-fed the opportunity. But when they got into that kind of catch-up mode, it was all pass, no running back, not even play action, which is wild. So just completely went away from the run game. Mike Williams, again, this is a game that, the Titans had allowed back-to-back 300-yard pass games, so we're hoping for just insane games from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. It just didn't materialize. It was a low-scoring game. 17-14 was the final score. Mike Williams comes away with only 8.7 points. Joe Mixon, 7.9 points. He's been meh all season long. He obviously had that one game for like 52 points, which, you cannot be denied. But if we look at, if we take that out, we extrapolate that one outlier, then he just hasn't been that utilized. We've seen a ton of more production go to the wide receivers, whether it's T. Higgins or Jamar Chase or Tyler Boyd. There's also a pretty stout run defense or front four for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so it is pretty good. And so I wouldn't be that concerned with Joe Mixon. I think he bounces back in a big way this coming week, but I just don't think his upside is what he used to be or what we're expecting it was from last year. D'Onta Foreman, 0.9 points. I'm done with Panthers running backs at this point, my dude. I am done with Panthers running backs. Chuba Hubbard couldn't even get anything going. And this is not a great run defense from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they just could not get anything going. Stuffed the goal line repeatedly. I'm just yelling at my phone, yelling at my TV. Just shove it in. Just push the ball in with D'Onta Foreman. Just jam it in there. You'll be fine. Doesn't get anything going. DJ Chark, 2.3 points. That was really unfortunate. Just didn't see the ball his way. I thought it was going to be a little bit more production, a little bit more focus on the DBs overlooking on Amon-Ra St. Brown's side. But again, this is a really stout Jets defense. We knew it was going to come back down to earth. Not going to be the high-scoring offense. But the Detroit Lions still pull out a win. Zonovan Knight, 2.3 points. Not too worried about that. This is, again, a really, really good Detroit Lions run defense. They've shut down Saquon Barkley. They shut down Aaron Jones. They shut down Ramondre Stevenson. It's fine. Wouldn't worry too much about that. Last two guys we're going to talk about here. Amari Cooper, 7.8 points. Obviously kind of in the same boat as David Njoku, where he was targeted, he was utilized, but it's just a very, very low-scoring game. Not many points. It's just, again, keep it on the ground, control the ball, control time of possession, and just don't lose the game. And they didn't need to utilize him very much. And, it's hard when that's the game script is, but these coaches aren't playing for fantasy football. They're playing to win, and they won the game. Finally, Pat Freiermuth. It's just so hard with, either Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. None of them are really capable of facilitating an NFL offense at this point, especially with the way Matt Canada's running the offense. I don't know if it's an issue with the quarterback or an issue with the offensive coordinator, but I'm scared whether it's Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, any pass-catching option. Run the game, Najee Harris, beautiful, love him. Any pass-catching option, just pretty awful at this point. So that's going to wrap up our duds. It's nice to say that we spent a lot more time on the studs rather than the duds. So, at least if you lost, you felt good about it. You put up a respectable score. There's a lot of high-scoring games this week. So let's get into our waiver wire, which is really, really crucial. So first waiver wire, and I'm going to order 3 wide receivers who had amazing games this past weekend, and I'm going to order them in the way I would recommend you picking them up. So put your first waiver in for this first guy I'm talking about, which is going to be Jahan Dotson. Again, for the Commanders, I think he's just super insanely talented. Lining up along off on the other side of Terry McLaurin, I think they really get him involved. He's found the end zone twice in a row. He's fully healthy from that hamstring injury that kept him out for 6 games. And I can't imagine what kind of pace he would be on right now if he'd been able to play all those games, probably in the running for Rookie of the Year. He's just super talented, super involved in this offense, and I think they're going to scheme him open. The offense really likes him down there. Number 2, Russell Gage. I really want to believe in this breakout at the end of the season for Russell Gage. We've seen Mike Evans struggle all year. He's just not buying into it. Chris Godwin's here, there. He has a lot of injury concerns. But what we saw at the end of the game was a wide receiver that was running routes towards the end of the game, a wide receiver that still had Brady's attention, and he was being hyper-targeted by Brady towards the end of the game. And I think that Brady in the past, when he finds a target that he likes, a guy that he trusts, he will target him. He'll throw to them. He'll make it a point to reward the guys that are giving effort, and I think that's going to be Russell Gage. Still getting a little bit over that sickness right there, so I'll cut out that coughing fit there. But Russell Gage, once he's earned that trust, I think Brady's going to continue to reward him, as we saw towards the end of the last game, reward him going into next week as well. Should be a good matchup for the Buccaneers as well. So I think Russell Gage slots in as a really nice flex option. Number 3 and my third and final wide receiver, again at the bottom, is going to be KJ Osborne. I know he had the most points out of all 3 wide receivers. It's funny how, most desirable one was the inverse of which one had the most points for this waiver order. However, I'm going by which ones do I think can be more projected going forward and which ones are most sustainable. I don't think KJ Osborne's production that he showed this past week is going to be sustainable. It was just really very odd. It's a very odd scenario in which you're down 33 points and you have to hyper pass in order to catch back up, and you're trying to just ferociously put points up on the board, completely downfield shot after downfield shot after downfield shot, quick out route, which is what KJ Osborne specializes in. I just don't think there's going to be any sort of similar scenario in which they're trying to catch up, in which they're using quick passes all the time against a defense that is that bad to allow those passes to continue happening. That's going to happen in the future. So KJ Osborne, we've seen his snap share hasn't changed at all over the season. Like, he's been on the field for over 75% of snaps 10 times this year. That's nothing new. He's seen 11, 10 targets a couple times previously this year. That's nothing new. None of this is nothing new. This is just, I guess, an outlier of a game. There's nothing in this that predicts future production for me. So, if you needed desperation, I would take a flyer on KJ Osborne. Maybe he gets rewarded the same way I was talking about Russell Gage getting rewarded after the performance this past week, but I just don't see that translating, especially when you're behind Thielen, Hawkinson, Jefferson, and obviously Dalvin Cook. Number 4, my tight end pickup of the week is going to be Dawson Knox, and I'm choosing Dawson Knox over Juwan Johnson just because next week it's going to be Bills against Chicago in Chicago. I'm assuming just the way that the Chicago defense is aligned and how dynamic Justin Fields is, it's going to be a high-scoring game over there in Chicago, and I want to have pieces and assets that are part of high-scoring games. Juwan Johnson is not going to be playing a high-scoring game, going against, I believe, the Browns. I should have looked this up beforehand, but whatever game they're going, my notes just say here that he's going to be part of a very low scoring game, whatever game it is. The team, I remember, has hit the under like 7 of the past 8 games. So it's not it's a low scoring game. I don't want it. High scoring game, I do want it. That's why I'm picking Dawson Knox as my tight end pickup of the week. And last but not least, if you are a Kyler Murray manager, if you are a Jalen Hurts manager and you're struggling for quarterback this week, I would recommend picking up and streaming this week is going to be none other than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold faces the Detroit Lions. That's been absolutely a factory for top 10 finishes on the week for the quarterback position. Obviously made Zach Wilson look really good this past week. Kirk Cousins had like a top 5 performance against them. It's just a defense that you can throw all over. I believe DJ Moore is a smash play, and Sam Darnold will do enough through the air and is competent enough to get it done. So he would be my quarterback pickup and stream for this week. I know, super sketchy, but right now it is a little sketchy. I think in my dynasty league, in a superflex league, my starting quarterbacks are Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. So that's the level of sketch that we're talking about right here. So, and I'm not telling you this advice just to, spurt stuff out of a talking head. I'm telling you, I'm picking up Sam Darnold. I'm playing Sam Darnold. I'm in this with you. Like, I'm taking my own advice. So don't, if he burns you, he burns me too. Have solace in that. So that's going to wrap up waivers and another wild week. Hopefully you guys survived. Take time, lick your wounds, take some time off. Thursday night's going to start back up again with another exciting matchup, and we'll have another, which is going to be the Jaguars at the Jets. So just a whole nother weekend to stress through fantasy football as we lead into the Christmas season. So with that being said, hope you found this information useful. Congratulations on making it this far. Good luck with waivers, and I will see you in a few days to preview the upcoming games.